Good morning. From the region that needs no introduction, I'm sure. I'm Melissa Jones from SPARCC. We're the coalition of the public health departments in the Bay Area.
Hello, I'm Kate O'Hara. I'm with East Bay Alliance for Sustainable Economy. We're a community organization that's part of the Bay Area for All collaborative here.
And I'd like to introduce you to Bay Area for All. We are a fairly unique collaboration in the Bay Area. We are the Six Winds Coalition for social equity, which includes a number of base-building organizations across the region, as well as advocacy groups and partners. The Great Communities Collaborative, which is a collaborative of funders focused on equitable development, and SPARCC, which, as I mentioned, is the coalition of the public health departments. It was formed by 3 public health directors feeling very impatient at the pace of change and getting really focused on changing the living conditions that could impact health. We are in an incredible catalytic moment in the Bay Area. We have now a housing crisis that has reached such proportions in terms of affordability that there is no question in the general public that we have a problem. And our catalytic moment is that consciousness has actually led to political will, and we know that's not always the case. That consciousness led voters to pass $12 billion in funding in the November election for housing, transit, and infrastructure. And there's an incredible opportunity with that kind of influx. And it's an opportunity we know doesn't need to lead to equity. And so we think our catalytic moment is this opportunity to make sure that it does.
What we know to be true happening in the Bay Area right now is that the way that investment has been happening has been actually exacerbating racial and economic inequities and causing severe displacement. What we see here is a map that shows where are the places where displacement is ongoing and advanced in the dark purple and at risk in the light purple. And as you can see, it's not just an inner Bay Area problem. It's not just in San Francisco and Oakland. It's actually in the whole region and in the suburbs as well. So both low-income communities of color are getting displaced out of our urban areas, but also they're getting displaced out of the suburbs. We're finding in the suburbs that already housing prices there are becoming unattainable for many families. And this all has a racialized aspect. So this shows, in particular, the changes in Black population. So San Francisco and Oakland have lost Black communities, have lost those families to displacement. In San Francisco, it's said that it's only 3% of people in San Francisco are Black today, and Oakland is going in the same direction. So the dark maroon is showing where it's going down, and then the green is showing where Black communities are relocating to, and increasingly it's into suburban communities. So Contra Costa County, which is in the top right, was the only county in the Bay Area over a 15-year period to see an increase in Black communities. And the reality is also for a lot of these people, they're displaced off this map. So this is the 9-county Bay Area, but as you continue to go east, you go into the Central Valley, and many families are moving all the way there and driving back in 2-3 hours into the Bay Area to work.
And the health impacts on that are huge. So there's the health impacts that I think a lot of people think about when they think of affordability. So these are the health impacts that are about the forced choices between medicine and utilities for heating and cooling, the choices between food and really shrinking your food budget to make your housing work. But there's a whole lot of other things that happen. And one of the big ones that we see is around children and children who move frequently. And what we start to see when we get to really frequent moves is a year difference, a year gap in their academic performance, right, with those changes. We also see incredibly long commutes that don't make up the cost that people had hoped they'd make up as they got pushed further and further out. And so in the Bay Area, for every dollar that you're saving moving out of the central cities in housing, you're picking up 77 cents in transportation costs. And so it means those forced choices around health stay very strong as you continue to get further and further from the job centers. And it's very difficult for health and for family stability, mental health, and stress. And so we have some values about what that means and what we could do to work differently. And so the public health departments across the Bay Area have adopted this framework. So is the California Department of Public Health. And in that framework, we've really moved from a focus on differences in life expectancy, differences in infant mortality, differences in disease rates, to looking at what can really scale changes, right? What can scale changes in those inequities? And that's really about the living conditions and the power we have. So you'll see in the circle the living conditions that make that difference, right? The physical environment, the economic environment that we live in and the access that we have to opportunities, the social environment, and then the institutions that impact all of those environments. This is a room that knows that institutions, that these are not all hidden hands of the market, that institutions make choices all day, every day, that create these conditions. There are a lot of rooms we speak to that don't know that, and we spend a lot of time educating that as a priority. And then saying, from that education comes power, right? That there are ways that we organize, there are ways that we move and make change, and that's really what Six Winds has done across the region in order to pass that incredible amount of that $16 billion that we're seeing now for housing and infrastructure.
And so in terms of how we're going to advance our vision, we're so excited to be a part of the SPARCC Collaborative, and I have to say, to be in a conversation where we can be talking about equitable development and really putting race and racial equity in our communities at the center is so refreshing, is so exciting, and for us it really builds on these networks and partnerships that have been in place in the Bay Area and enables us to build at a broader scale, but to stay rooted in our communities. And I think at this moment, you know, as was being said in the panel before, with what's happening on the national landscape, the innovation and the ability to be resilient is going to come in our cities and our regions. And so we're so excited to be a part of this with all of you and really appreciate the investment of the national team and the funders that have made this possible. And this shows a little bit of kind of our theory of change around this, that we need all of these pieces in place, from community stabilization to community-led development and community control and ownership, and that this, you know, runs the gamut in strategies from community engagement and organizing to policy and to actually putting development in the hands of the community. So the two particular strategies that we'll pursue as a part of SPARCC, one is community-led housing preservation. So as a part of the displacement and increased housing costs, we are losing at a rapid rate the naturally occurring affordable housing. So of course we want to build as much new affordable housing as possible, but we also want to preserve what is there through land trusts or land banking models that really build on the leadership of tenants who have long-term living in the community. So we're looking at models for small site acquisition that can really help communities to stay and thrive in place. And that will leverage the $12 billion in public resources that we've just approved around the region. The other major resource we have at our fingertips is a number of large-scale public land sites around the region that are ripe for development and create generational opportunities for transformative development. This is one example, which is in the city of Concord, which is in Contra Costa, the county I mentioned earlier. This site is the size of half of San Francisco. So it is an enormous site, has the potential for 12,000 housing units, 29,000 jobs. It's largely vacant. It's a former naval base. And so it's an opportunity to do development in a way that's connected to the BART station and that really brings the community into the process. And while so far there's been the kind of typical community engagement happening, it hasn't really brought in the long-term immigrant community, the low-income communities of color that exist in this city that are not represented, reflected, or listened to in the city structure. And so we're hoping this can be a model of how do we do development in a suburban community in a different political context that brings all of these values of climate resiliency and health and racial equity to the forefront. So just in closing, that's Atlanta. We are really so excited to be a part of this, and I think, for all of us, we can think about times when we are in places where we feel really valued, where we feel really safe and included, and to me, that's really at the heart of what we're trying to build and create here, that we want communities that are a foundation for everybody to thrive, for everybody to have a sense of community and belonging. So thank you.